you? Is it busy? Is there anything going on this week that we should know about? Is there something important to discuss? It is election eve, you guys, and I could not be more excited. I mean, could I be more excited? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we have a candidate on the line with us right now, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, running for mayor of the city of Chicago. I'm guessing it's a busy last 24 hours for you, sir. How's it going?
Hey, what's going on? It's going well. Thank you for asking. And it is busy, and that's a good sign. If I weren't doing anything, that would probably indicate that I'm not doing well. But because we are so busy, that's a sign that our campaign continues to catch the imagination and the hopes and dreams of the people of Chicago, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
What are the things that you are focused on right now in these last hours? Because, look, all these stories keep coming out and polling numbers. What are you committed to doing? What message are you committed to making sure that anybody who has not yet early voted is still on the fence? Because I talked to a lot of people yesterday at polling place, and they're still undecided. So what are you focused on right now? Like, what are the events you're doing? What kind of running around are you going to do tomorrow? Tell us.
Well, I'm still committed to what we've been doing for the last several months, and that's organizing all over the city. And so we've probably had, easily over 75, conservatively, 75 house parties. We have hundreds of donors where we've raised roughly $350,000 from just individual donors around the city, average contribution of $90, $95. We have knocked 300,000 doors, I believe we've reached the city of Chicago. And so what we have discovered, obviously, as people get to know me, they are clear that I represent and reflect the best values of the city of Chicago. And so, my message is still pretty simple, that in order to have a better, stronger, safer Chicago, you have to love people enough to invest in them. I'm committed to doing that. I'm the only one who has presented sweeping plans that can help transform this city. And we do it all without raising property taxes. We do it without, though there have been people lying about my platform. That hasn't worked. And we do it by bringing people together. And that's what I'm confident that this city is prepared and willing to do. And that's why I'm in the position that I'm in. The movement of education justice, the movement for healthcare justice, for environmental and climate justice, these movements, housing justice, have come together at a critical moment in our city's history, prepared to take the message of working people, middle-class families, those struggling in poverty to the fifth floor, and I'm looking forward to leading that effort.
I live in an area with a lot of first responders, and many of them will say they don't trust you. Some of them will use more colorful language that we don't need to get into. What do you have to say to those folks who are cynical about your platform and your approach towards it? And some of that has been shaped by the other candidates. What do you want to tell our first responders?
Yeah, the first thing is this. My plan is very clear about making sure that first responders actually get to do their job. Almost 40% of the 911 calls that come through are mental health crises. Why are we asking police officers to be social workers and counselors and marriage therapists? Look, I've been a public school teacher in the city. I know all of the societal issues that fall at the feet at teachers and police officers, and people expect us to do the jobs of every single profession. My plan actually alleviates and relieves law enforcement from doing the things that previous administrations have constantly forced them to do. In fact, Paul Vallis is the reason why we are in this economic crisis. He was in charge in the 90s of the budget when I was in high school. His failures to be able to put together a budget that speaks to the values of working people is why we are in this economic crisis. In fact, everywhere he has been in charge of a budget, whether it's been in Chicago, Philadelphia, New Orleans, he has been fired. If people want to continue down the path of old-style politics that has left families behind, I reject that, because I believe that there's a better, stronger, safer Chicago that awaits us with the right kind of investment. So I'm asking people to actually trust the work that I've done, because the people who have been in charge before is why we're in the predicament now. We can't go back to that.
We're talking to Commissioner Brandon Johnson, candidate for the mayor of Chicago. For those who are just getting in their cars or just tuning in, another question. You just mentioned that you're a teacher, and you also alluded to the contention between Paul Vallis and, well, at least I think it's well documented, the contention between Paul Vallis and CTU. You, on the other hand, endorsed by CTU, a lot of support there, a lot of a strong relationship there. And one listener asks, can you please ask Brandon Johnson, if elected elected, will he stand up to CTU? If you don't agree with them or have some discrepancies between ideology or policy, will you fall in line with them or challenge them?
I'm going to stand up for the people of the city of Chicago, like I've done as a Cook County commissioner. Look, I'm also supported by child care workers. I'm supported by individuals who take care of seniors. We have independent political organizations all over the city of Chicago that have supported me. Elected officials like Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, and everyone in between. I'm going to be responsible for a budget that speaks to the interest of working class and middle class families. And as a Cook County commissioner, I've passed multi-billion-dollar budgets, working with 16 other county commissioners, a board president, and separately elected, constitutionally protected, countywide elected officials. I'm the only person in this campaign who is running for mayor that has a record of bringing people together, especially when it comes to passing budgets. Bottom line is this: Paul Vallis is responsible for school closures. He's responsible for school privatization. He has caused the ominous decline of black educators. That has happened under his reign. Wherever he has gone, he has left a trail of tears behind. And so we cannot go back to that old style of politics. And, of course, I'm grateful to have the support of working people all over the city of Chicago. But I'm very much committed to making sure, as a parent who sends their children to the Chicago public schools, that there's no one in this race that has more of an incentive for the city of Chicago to have effective public schools than someone who sends their children to them. And so that person who has that question, that concern, you have my word that I'm going to stand for the interest of parents, because I am one.
There you go, Dan. That was our listener that wanted that question asked. You know, one of the things that we talk a lot about over the last 4 years has been the way in which the mayor's office has been a little bit abrasive with members of city council. How would you describe your working relationship with colleagues, with people you disagree with people that you want to be able to make sure that the right things are done for the city of Chicago, for the people of Chicago?
Thank you. I was raised in a very large family. I'm one of 10. Plus, my parents were foster parents, so I learned early in life how to negotiate, especially because we only had one bathroom. What my father taught us, though, growing up, the real sign of someone who has true character. He never called it leadership. He said true character. You have to be collaborative. You have to be compassionate. You have to be competent. That's my style. I've done it as an organizer. It's why we have an elected representative school board. I organized all over the city of Chicago before I was an elected official to get that done. I was on the front line as we were fighting for 15, organizing workers across the state to push the General Assembly to actually to do right by working people. We have civilian oversight of the policing. We're district council races around the city where the individuals that are neighbors will have say-so on how we do policing in the city of Chicago. This is all brought to us by a movement because democracy actually matters. And so, my style of leadership is collaborative. It's compassionate. And then we have to make sure that we're being competent, because the people of Chicago deserve leadership that actually knows what they're doing. And unfortunately, the politics of old that have left families behind has placed us in this predicament right now. And I'm glad that people are speaking to their hopes and dreams and not voting to their fears. And the misinformation that's being spread about people, that we can do better than cast people based upon their religion or cast people based upon their geographical makeup. The city of Chicago can be better than that. And that's why people are saying that Brandon is better for the city of Chicago, because we have a multicultural, multi-generational movement from the first ward to the 50th ward. The only person that has a ground game in every single geographical area in the city of Chicago, because I love people enough to invest in them now as I run, and that's how I'm going to lead when I'm the mayor of the city of Chicago.
In all these months of campaigning, which I believe started, it was August, September, sometime in the summer last year. Is that about right? I'm trying to remember when you announced.
Yeah, I announced in October, so I've been at it since the end of October.
Okay. Along the way, so there's a lot. You've answered a lot of questions, had so many conversations, and I'm wondering what has stood out for you. Is there a moment where you went, oh, that's unexpected, or this is something that's going to stay with me and I'm going to carry with me, win or lose in this race?
There's a woman who met me in McKinley Park for a house party. She was retired. She was on a fixed income. She collects a Social Security check every single month. When I announced in October, she had been saving her Social Security check for this house party in McKinley Park. and she contributed $300 to my campaign from her Social Security. I didn't want to take it. I didn't. She believes in this movement so much, she was willing to save up her fixed income just to be able to contribute to make sure that our movement is being expressed. I will never forget Ms. Barajas. And every single day from that moment, I've been carrying that story and that moment with me. It's why even when I get a little tired and sometimes people say things about our campaign and our movement that's disparaging, that I don't get discouraged, because there are people out there like Ms. Barajas who believe in us enough to invest in our moment and our movement, because that is the spirit. That is the spirit of Chicago. But there are a lot of things that you can characterize the city in many different ways. But what I've seen overwhelmingly, that there is just a radical amount of love that people have one for another, and that's how we run our campaign. That's what our plans speak to, and that's how I'm going to lead when I'm the mayor of the city of Chicago. That we're going to be collaborative, competent. Of course, we're going to be compassionate, but we're going to lead with love. No matter who you are, whether you agree with every single ideological friend that I possess, you'll never have a mayor again, as long as I'm the mayor of the city of Chicago, that refuses to actually invest in people and demonstrate love. And Ms. Barajas is the epitome of what this campaign reflects.
That is an incredible story, and I know that there will be other things that you reflect on, and the other thing that folks are wondering about, because like I said, there are people who are on the fence. There are people who think, well, if there's a candidate I like, but I don't think they've got a shot at making the runoff, am I wasting my vote? We've been talking quite a bit on ranked choice voting. How do you think that would have played in a race like this, and do you support ranked choice voting?
I do support it. There's a reason why our candidacy is called Fires, because we're speaking to the interest of working people and middle-class families who've struggled under this economy for a very long time. And the fact that we have people who live in poverty in one of the richest cities in the world is unconscionable. But what I can say is that, every poll has sort of a different story. But let's tell the truth, though. I'm in this runoff, and every poll has indicated that. The latest poll that has just come out, again, has me at 20%. And no one really knew my name back in October. But you know what they do know? They know our message. And they know I've been delivering a message that speaks to truth, that speaks to justice and equity, fairness. So if I'm confident that we're going to get in the runoff, and we're going to continue to carry this message all the way to April. And yes, we have to have forms of democracy that allows for full participation. And I'm committed to doing that as mayor and pushing policies that help provide that type of structure, so that people can have like a real choice, when it comes to, or they don't feel like they're being isolated because their choice is not a person, who is in as best of a position as others.
I have to ask you as well, this is just going to be sort of taking a look back at this entire campaign. You've been in dozens of forums, as you mentioned, hundreds of parties in people's homes and meet and greets and things like that. How have you, and this is something that I don't know if anyone's asked you, but how are you taking care of yourself? Because should you become the mayor of Chicago, you have to continue to have that balance of self-care. And I think it can contribute to the way people approach each other if they're not managing that, being aware and being thoughtful about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, and that's something that I'm committed to doing. Of course, citywide. That's why we're going to reopen the mental health centers. We're going to pass treatment at trauma. So we're providing care for one another. Mobile units, particularly for students, our public school system, mobile units of care that can be available throughout the city. For me personally, I'm grounded by my faith. My father is a pastor, is retired. My grandfather served as a pastor. I have an incredible wife, 25 years. She's my best friend. 3 amazing children that I get to come home to every single day. And quite frankly, Mima, my mother-in-law, she's quite supportive. She's actually here now as I prepare to leave out for another event. She's providing support for the 2 little ones as my wife picks up our eldest, who's a freshman at Kenwood. So it's really just surrounding myself with people who love me, who know me. And then, of course, trying to get a healthy dose of baseball. What better way to pass the time by?
Hold up. I don't know if I've asked you. I don't know if I've seen the answer. Cubs or White Sox?
I grew up watching WGN.
Okay. I don't know about the other listeners, but I'm like, okay, we're good. I'm actually wearing I'm wearing Cubby blue, but it's actually I'm a dork for elections. In my stand-up, I talk about how I make my husband dress up as a judge of elections, which is just carrying a box of donuts and wearing suspenders. That's just a weird thing. But I'm wearing my 2012 Obama shirt from his campaign. I love these days. The energy leading into election day is one of my favorite things. What have been some of your favorite memories besides the woman who saved her Social Security checks? Was it the forums? Was it the meet and greets? Or was it just kind of the whole thing in congregate?
It's really all of the above. And I don't want to give a political answer here, but it really is all of the above. I've been to every corner of the city of Chicago. I mean, and there's so much pride in this city that I wish those, from various neighborhoods, I wish we could see one another at the same time, because there's so much that links us. Whether you're a family in Jefferson Park or Morgan Park or McKinley Park or Humboldt Park, we want what's best for our families. We want good schools, reliable transportation, healthcare, good paying jobs. We want to afford to live here in an environment that works, access to food, healthy food, a safe, thriving community. That's what people want. Parks and recreation. I mean, this is what binds us all together. And, I've had so many awesome meals.
There you go. There it is.
Yes. And I've done my best to make sure that I stay healthy. But, when you are in the dynamic culture of the city of Chicago, and there's something that comes with a little extra spice as well, whether it's Mexican food, Indian food, whether it's soul food. I mean, I've tasted it all. And Chicago, look, we can be better. I actually think we could just bring the city together by just making sure that we have potlucks and taste tests for different macaroni and cheese from all the different cultures that do it. So I've enjoyed every bit of it. Of course, there's some amazing art that's online. My family is a little bit overwhelmed by the level of artistic characterizations of their husband, brother, cousin, son, and father. But it's been pretty cool to watch and see the city become so excited around a set of values that, quite frankly, should have prevailed a long time ago. I'm just glad we're in a position where we can actually get it done.
I have a couple more questions from listeners. Do you have time?
Of course.
Okay, great. So here's one. I'll take one call, and then I think I have one call and one text so far. Oh, two texts. I have a question. How will Brandon Johnson bring companies and jobs to the entire city? He always talks about the Austin neighborhood, which is fine, but what about downtown, the Loop, and the rest of the city?
Well, I talk about Austin because that's where I live. That's all. I mean, right. Of course, I think that's important to talk about where I live, just to give some context of what I bring to this conversation. But of course, I represent, a community that is, quite diverse and broad. I actually represent suburban Cook County as well. I mean, look, I've mentioned this in my plan that there is a great deal of vacancy downtown because of the pandemic. And so I lay out plans around biotechnology and the vacancy that is there that provides opportunities for us to actually attract biotech companies. In addition to making sure that we're moving green technology as a whole around the city, I put together an environmental plan that speaks to justice, right? Because the environment in and of itself, as we work to have a more friendlier environment, we're talking about a citywide composting structure, right? To make sure that we are creating local economies, particularly small businesses, to be able to help the infrastructure within communities by having economic stability and security, the micro grants and loans that will help small businesses as well. But the really big thing, of course, is making sure that our city is safer. I mean, that is the number one reason why big businesses in particular, or even small businesses, are struggling to exist and thrive and want to stay here. And so my public safety plan speaks to what works, and that is investing in people. So, I'm going to make sure that, unlike other administrations, I'm going to make sure that every single neighborhood is concentrated on. And thank you, whoever that was, for acknowledging the fact, like a neighborhood like Austin is finally getting some recognition and some attention, because we have not had that in an entire generation.
And I've got a caller on the line. Myrna, we've only got a couple minutes left here, so we've got your question and another one. So what would you like to ask the commissioner? Commissioner Brandon Johnson, on with Myrna.
Hi. At the forum a couple of weeks ago, I'm almost positive I heard you say that your plan was to raise a hotel tax by 60% or more. The question was posted on your Facebook page, and you said no, that wasn't you who said that. And last night, Paul Vallis mentioned that also. Can you clarify that? Are you planning on raising it, and how much?
No. There were a couple of lies that had been made about an income tax as well. It's just not true. Look, it was described as a mistake by a publication, particularly with the city income tax. It's incorrect. It's not in my plan. And I hope that people recognize that when publications make mistakes like that and they retract them, we don't bring any judgment. They apologize for it. I'm prepared to move forward. Our plan is very clear. It's not that much different than what President Biden said the other night ago. A teacher and a firefighter should not pay the same tax rate as a billionaire or millionaire. The city of Chicago agrees with me. 71% of the city of Chicago supported when Governor Pritzker pushed for the progressive income tax. 71% said it was the right thing to do. And so I believe that the city of Chicago should challenge the General Assembly yet again to do what the city of Chicago deserves. And that's to have a tax structure that does not place burdens on everyday people. And that's why I'm the only person to put together a plan that does not raise property taxes. That's different than, of course, than someone like Paul Vallis. I think it's actually not surprising that he's lying. He was in charge of the budget in the 1990s. And it's the reason why we have the predicament that we're in right now. I would ask the entire city of Chicago to begin to ask him questions about how he didn't pay pensions, how he took dollars out of particular streams and placed them in the general revenue stream that has caused the type of economic depravity that we're all experiencing. When I'm mayor of the city of Chicago, I'm going to fix what he messed up, and I'm also going to make critical investments without placing the burden on middle-class families like he has done all over the country.
I'm going to take two more questions. We got Debbie. We have one call, one text, and that'll be. We have to let the commissioner go. He's got stuff to do on these last 26 hours of the election. Debbie in Old Town, what's your question for the commissioner?
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. It's very important. I did just vote for Brandon, and so did my husband. And I've seen you at many forums and listened to you, and you are definitely my choice. What my question is for you is, if you weren't a candidate and you weren't voting, and you weren't voting for you, who would you vote for?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a number of candidates that actually enjoy what they're talking about. So here's what I would say, that there are candidates that are still pushing an agenda that I think is still harmful, though they are getting some things right. People will remember in 2015, I was one of the lead organizers with, at that time, Cook County Commissioner Garcia. I am disappointed that some candidates have moved more to the right than what I believe the residents of the city of Chicago want and deserve. I would say at this point, unless there was some significant movement from the other candidates, it would be very difficult to be able to say out loud at this point who I would be willing to vote for without making sure that we're pushing them to be closer towards the particular view of the world that the folks like you obviously have. So I like a number of them. Cam has been a good friend, pushing for some dynamics in the General Assembly. I've worked, with Alderwoman King, of course, as we were pushing to raise the minimum wage. Again, these are very thoughtful, brilliant individuals. They just have some political views of the world that I think that are too heavily reliant upon the old form of governance that have left too many of our families behind.
And this will be the last question. We are talking to Commissioner Brandon Johnson, running for mayor. This is a question from a texter. U.S. cities don't have enough public bathrooms, and Chicago is certainly no exception. Coupled with a homelessness crisis, the shortage brings health and safety concerns to light. And what are your plans for providing more equitable access to these to homeless people, to people traveling, to tourists, to residents?
Yeah, thank you again for that question. So Bring Chicago Home is one of the top priorities in my administration. That's going to raise revenue. to deal with the unhoused. I mean, it's a very horrific dynamic right now, of which 20,000 of the 65,000 who are unhoused are students. And so that's making sure, obviously, all of our public accommodations are available to support those who are unhoused. As we build up more affordable housing, as we build more public housing, as we create a pathway to home ownership, we have to make sure that we're building communities around those spaces, like our parks and recreation spaces, so that there's more access to public accommodations, which include bathrooms. But I will say this, I appreciate this question so much, because when we talk about Black history, and particularly during this month, we talk about school, we talk about jobs, and access to voting, and all those things are very important to remember the struggle for democracy in this country, and particularly those who are descendants of slaves. But it was bathrooms, it was water fountains that we were also denied. And so when we talk about, in my campaign, about public accommodations, I include all of those things because it's deeply connected to the overall struggle for our existence in this city, in this country. And so that requires real planning, but it also requires an investment. And just know that as mayor of the city of Chicago, voting for me, you're going to have someone who loves people enough to invest in them. You have my commitment. So I want people to go to my website. They can check me out there, BrandonForChicago.com. I want people to punch 5 and vote for Brandon Johnson, because I believe a better, stronger, safer Chicago is possible, especially if we do it together. And I'm committed to doing that.
We appreciate your time. Go get them. I know that I don't know how much you'll sleep tonight, but at least meditate. All right? Prayer and meditation.
So much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right.
I appreciate you too, sir. Take care. Have a good evening. You'll relax, but good luck. Let's take a break here. I'll take your calls. Howard and Jim, David, thank you all so much for being on hold. I will take your calls in just a moment on Driving It Home with me, Patti Vasquez. Howard, you're going to go first because I didn't get a chance to start the show with gratitude. More in a moment on Driving It Home with me, Patti Vasquez. Thanks to our sponsors, Minocqua Brewing, Kids Above All, and European Car Service.